There's a brown glass bottle sitting on a shelf in my potting shed. It cost me $4 at the pharmacy in town, the same little bottle your own mother kept in the cabinet to clean a scraped knee. 3 days ago, the leaves on my summer squash were dusted white, like somebody had walked down the row shaking a flour sifter over the whole patch. This morning, those same leaves are green again. The white is gone. And I did not use one single thing that a chemical company sells for garden fungus. I did not spray anything that would harm my honeybees. I did not put down anything that would poison the earthworms working that soil, or the toads that live in the shade under the squash leaves, or the bumblebees that come to the blossoms at first light, or the grandchildren who pull a cucumber off the vine and eat it right there without ever thinking to wash it. It kills one thing. It kills the fungus. And within the hour, it breaks down into plain water and air and leaves nothing behind at all. I will tell you honestly that the mildew loves best of anything in this whole garden, and I have not lost a squash vine, a cucumber hill, or a stand of zinnias to that white powder in 12 years. I have no greenhouse fans. I have no sprayer truck coming down my lane. I have no bottle of fungicide with a skull printed on the label locked up in a cabinet away from the little ones. What I have is that $4 brown bottle, a pump sprayer I carry on my shoulder, and a few things my grandfather taught me about why the powder comes in the first place. I'm going to show you exactly what I do, in the order I do it, what it costs, and where to put it. Then I am going to tell you the part that ought to bother you a little, which is that this cure has been sitting on the pharmacy shelf for 100 years, and the garden center down the road would still rather sell you an $18 bottle with a brand name across the front, because a $4 cure that you already own does not need to be sold to you twice. Stay with me. By the end of this, you'll know how to clear that white powder off your own plants this week for less than the price of a cup of coffee in town. And your bees will keep right on working the flowers while you do it. Let me start with what most folks get wrong, because if you do not understand this part, none of the rest will make sense to you. That white dust on your leaves is not dirt. It is not dust that blew in on the wind and settled. It is not something you can wipe off with a rag and be done with. It is alive. It is a fungus, and the gardeners who know it have a name for it. They call it powdery mildew. It begins as a single spore, too small for your eye to see, that lands on the top of a leaf. It sinks a little root down into that leaf, and it begins to feed on the plant itself. Then it grows and it spreads, and that white powder you're looking at is not one thing. It is millions upon millions of new spores, all of them ready to lift off on the next breath of wind and land on the next leaf and the next plant and your neighbor's garden after that. Now here is the strange thing about this particular fungus, and it is the thing almost nobody understands. Most every fungus in a garden needs the leaf to be wet. Powdery mildew is the opposite. It does not want rain on the leaf. A good hard rain will actually knock it back. What it wants is warm days and cool nights and damp, still air, and leaves that are crowded together in the shade where no breeze ever reaches them to dry them off. That is why it shows up worst in the thick of the plant, down in the middle where the leaves pile on one another. That is why it comes on strongest in late summer when the days are hot and the nights turn cool. It is not a wet weather problem. It is a still air problem. And here is why you cannot just ignore it. That white coating covers the leaf, and a leaf covered in mildew cannot do its work. A leaf is how the plant breathes and how it drinks in the light and turns it into food. Cover that leaf over with fungus, and the plant begins to starve. The fruit comes small and comes few. The vine that should have fed your family clear through September gives out and dies back in the middle of August. Mildew does not rot your plant down to the ground, the way some diseases do. It is quieter than that. It simply starves the plant a little more each day and steals your harvest out from under you, while you are still telling yourself it is only a bit of white on a few leaves. All right, so now you know your enemy. Here is the whole of what I do about it. You take 1 cup of hydrogen peroxide, the plain 3% kind, the brown bottle from the pharmacy or the grocery, the ordinary stuff, not the strong concentrated kind. They sell for other purposes. That stronger kind will hurt your plants, and it will hurt you, so leave it be. 1 cup of the plain 3%, and you pour it into 1 gallon of water. That is it. That is the mixture. If you have only a few plants to see to, you can put it in a hand spray bottle at the same measure. If you have a whole garden like I do, you want a pump-up garden sprayer, the kind you fill and pump by hand and carry on your shoulder. About $40 at the hardware store, and it lasts a lifetime. I do not use anything that needs electricity, as you might have guessed, and a good hand sprayer has never once let me down. Now let me tell you why this works, because you ought to understand it and not just take my word. Hydrogen peroxide is water with 1 extra piece of oxygen clinging to it. Plain water is 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen. This is that, with 1 more oxygen along for the ride, and that extra piece does not want to stay put. When the mixture touches that living fungus on the leaf, it lets that extra oxygen go all at once in a little burst, and that burst tears the walls of the mildew's cells and breaks apart its spores. It burns the fungus up, in a manner of speaking, right there on contact. And then, it's work done. The peroxide falls apart into what it always wanted to be. Plain water and plain air. It leaves no residue. Nothing settles into your soil. Nothing builds up on your food. You can spray a cucumber in the morning, rinse it at noon, and eat it at supper, and there is not a thing left on it but water. Here's how you put it on. Do it in the cool of the morning or in the evening as the sun is going down. Never in the heat of the day with the sun straight overhead. I will come back to that in a minute because it is one of the mistakes folks make. You wet the leaves down good, the tops and the undersides both, until the mixture runs off the edges. The undersides matter. That is where the fungus hides and where most people never think to look. And do not just hit the leaves that have gone white. Spray the healthy leaves all around them too, because those are the ones the spores are drifting toward next. You are not just killing what you can see, you are protecting what is not sick yet. Now, the mistakes. Because I have watched good gardeners do all of this and then swear to me that it did not work, and every time it came down to one of four things. The first mistake is making it too strong. Folks get it in their head that if a little does some good, then a lot will do more good, and they double the peroxide or they reach for that stronger bottle. Do not do it. Too strong, and instead of burning the fungus, you will bleach and burn the leaf itself. 1 cup to 1 gallon. That is the measure, and it is the measure for a reason. If you have never done it before, spray just a few leaves the first evening and leave it a full day to be sure your plants take it well before you do the whole row. The second mistake is spraying in the hot sun. Even the right mixture, at the right strength, will scorch a wet leaf if the sun is beating straight down on it while it is still damp. The water catches the light like 100 little glasses, and it burns. Morning or evening. Cool air, low sun. Every time. The third mistake is the big one, and it is the same mistake I see with near about every natural remedy there is. Folks spray one time and walk away and expect the trouble to be gone for good. This is a contact cure. It is not a medicine that travels around inside the plant looking for sickness. It kills the fungus it touches, on the day you touch it, and not one spore more. And all the while, new spores are drifting in on the air and landing fresh. So you spray, and then you spray again 3 days later, and again 3 days after that, until the white is well and truly gone. And then, to keep it gone, you go over your mildew-prone plants once a week for the rest of the season. It is not much, a few minutes with a sprayer. But you cannot do it once and be finished, any more than you can wash the supper dishes once in June and call the kitchen clean for the summer. The fourth mistake is the smallest, but it is worth saying. Before you spray, walk your rows and pull off the few leaves that are more white than green, the ones that are all but gone. Do not try to save a leaf that is already spent. It will not come back, and it is only sitting there breathing out spores onto everything near it. Pull those, carry them off, and burn them or bury them deep. Do not throw them on your compost pile, where the spores will lie waiting to come back and find you again next year. Now let me be straight with you, because I have no use for a man who promises you a miracle. This does not heal a leaf. A leaf that has already gone yellow and crippled under the mildew is not going to turn green and whole again just because you sprayed it. That leaf is spent. What the peroxide does is kill the living fungus so it stops its spreading. And then your new growth, the leaves that come after, come in clean and green, and it will not fix a garden that is planted too thick and sits in dead, still air. It is a tool, a good one, an honest one, a cheap one. But it is a tool, not a magic word, and the man who tells you otherwise is selling you something. Which brings me to the part my grandfather cared about most, because he always said the cure is easy and the prevention is where the wisdom lies. The first thing is air. A garden wants a breeze moving through it. My grandfather would not plant his squash close and crowded the way the seed packet tells you that you can. He gave every plant its room. He would go down the rows in early summer and prune out the low, crowded leaves down in the middle, the ones piled on top of one another where no wind and no morning sun ever reached. Mildew is a still air disease. Open the plant up so the morning air can move through it and dry the leaves, and you have taken away half of what the fungus needs to live before it ever arrives. The second thing is water. Water the ground, not the plant. Water in the morning, never at night. A leaf that goes into the cool of the evening, still damp, sitting in the shade, is an open invitation. Keep the water down at the roots where it belongs and keep the leaves dry, and you have taken away the humidity the fungus is hunting for. The third thing is my wife's doing, and I will admit I doubted it for years until I watched it work with my own eyes. She takes plain milk, 1 part milk to 2 parts water, and once a week she sprays it right in the sunshine over the plants she knows the mildew favors, and she starts before there is ever a speck of white to be seen. Now, I cannot tell you exactly why it works. Nobody can, entirely. Something in the milk reacting with the sunlight is the best anyone has figured. But the studies keep finding that it does work, and it feeds the leaf a little something besides. She swears by it, and after 12 years of watching her zinnias stay clean while the neighbors turn gray, I have stopped arguing. Some in our community use a spoonful of baking soda in a quart of water with a single drop of dish soap to help it cling, sprayed on before the mildew comes. It changes the surface of the leaf just enough that the fungus cannot get its hold. There's a gentler kind, a potassium powder they sell for gardens, that does the same and is kinder to the plant. Any of these, put on ahead of trouble, will save you most of the spraying you would have done later. I want to leave you with the bigger picture because I think it matters more than the recipe. Powdery mildew is the quiet thief of the garden. It does not come in the night and knock your plants flat, so you know you have been robbed. It works slow. It takes a little of your harvest and then a little more, week upon week, until the vine that ought to have carried your family into the fall is dead in the heat of August. You find yourself buying at the market the very thing you grew. The answer most folks are handed is a shelf full of branded bottles and a habit of reaching for them the moment they see a spot of white. There is an older answer. Understand the disease. Keep the air moving and the leaves dry. And when the white does show up, reach for the $4 brown bottle you already own. So why don't more gardeners know this? I will tell you plainly. Because there is no money in telling you the cure is already in your medicine cabinet. That brown bottle has no brand on it worth advertising. It does not sit in a bright display at the front of the store. Nobody profits from a $4 answer, so nobody takes out an advertisement to tell you about it. The fungus that is choking your plants is a problem you can solve for the price of a sandwich, and a problem that cheap simply never gets talked about. That is the whole of it. So here is what I want you to do this week. Walk your rows first and pull off and carry away the leaves that are more white than green. Burn them or bury them. Do not compost them. That is step 1, and it costs you nothing. Then mix 1 cup of plain 3% hydrogen peroxide into 1 gallon of water, and in the cool of the morning or the evening, spray your plants down, tops and undersides, until it runs. Then do it again in 3 days, and again in 3 more, until the white is gone, and once a week after that to keep it away. And while you are at it, open up your crowded plants so the air can move, and move your watering to the morning and down onto the ground where it belongs. If you want to get ahead of it for good, start the milk spray on next year's squash before the mildew ever has a chance to come. That is your week. $4, an hour of your attention, and not one thing put down that will harm a bee, a bird, a toad, or a child. And by the end of the season, you will be carrying squash and cucumbers into your kitchen while your neighbor, the one who paid for the fancy bottle, is wondering where his went. Tell me in the comments below where you garden and what the mildew is getting after in your patch this year. I read every one of them. And tell me if you try the brown bottle. I would like to know how it goes for you. The folks in my community have known this for a long while. I am telling it to the ones outside of it who were never taught. Next time, I'm going to show you what my grandmother did to keep the beetles off her beans without a drop of poison. It takes a bar of a plain soap, an old glass jar, and one thing off the supper table you would never in your life think to use. It worked for 100 years before there was anything you could buy, and it still works better than most of what you can. Until then, keep the air moving, keep your eyes on your leaves, and remember that the people who fed this country with their own 2 hands knew things we are only just beginning to remember.